Hey everyone, the numbers are in for the Panama City Beach real estate market, the 30A real estate market for the month of July. It's July 28th, 2020, so we're a little bit early. Again, I'm Craig Duran with the Duran Group at Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices. And again, just trying to make sense of these real estate markets as it relates to the pandemic and how that's potentially affecting things in both the Panama City Beach market and the 30A market. For those of you seeing any of these videos in the past, you know I've been tracking this chart from a company called Showing Time since the very, very beginning of the coronavirus stuff. Early March, when things really ramped up here, we knew we were going to see a fall off on showing activity. And again, remember, this chart comes from a company that real estate agents and real estate brokers use to schedule showing appointments. So if someone wants to see 5 houses or 5 condos, an agent can go to this one website and schedule everything there. What's nice about it, we're now tracking to see how many showing appointments are actually happening, not just scheduled, but actually taking place. So we can see and start to compare that over time. So we knew early on in March that this was going to happen here. This is the orange line is 2020. We knew that we were going to see a fall off, and I was interested to see how long we were going to see less showing activity and how dramatic, how much less showing activity we actually had. As you can see, this is for the state of Florida. We sort of cratered, bottomed out at the beginning of April, but we really started to rally back pretty quickly. And by end of May, we were almost in the same place as we were in 2019. And so if you look at this since then, we've really been tracking pretty much on pace with what happened in 2019. Remember, 2019 was a pretty good, healthy year in the real estate in both the 30A market and the Panama City Beach market. So it's interesting to see that our numbers have recovered to the point where they're very, very similar, almost identical to last year's numbers. So if we're trying to get some sense of where a market may be headed, it's a good idea to get some sense of how many people are getting out and looking at real estate. Remember, I know it's basic, but if we're going to have a real estate closing, we have to have had a contract. If we have a contract, in most cases, we've had someone get out and look at real estate to be able to make an offer. So the first thing we can see here is that numbers have recovered really since early June, so that people are getting out and looking at real estate as much as they were last year. Now, the next thing to try to understand is, are they getting out just to get out for something to do? Or are they getting out and making offers, and are contracts being put together and ultimately closing? So the next thing we started tracking in early March was the number of new contracts written in any of these markets. And I broke it down into 3 different markets. I broke it down into the Panama City Beach homes market, the Panama City Beach condo market, and the 30A real estate market. And in this chart, the easiest way to look at it is right here. The blue line representing the Panama City Beach homes market, the red line representing the condo market, the yellow line representing 30A. And so if you look in the month of July, again, Panama City Beach homes is first. We'll start there. So we were up 7%. And this is going week by week by week, comparing what happened in this week in 2020 with that same week in 2019. So there'll be, some small variances, wouldn't be surprising. But when we start to see big numbers, that's something worth noting. So early July for the Panama City Beach homes market, we were only up 7% that week when compared to the year before. Not really a huge difference, especially when we had been seeing numbers like 81% and 36%. But look at what happened through the rest of the month. Still 69% up year over year in writing new contracts for homes, up 67% writing new contracts for homes, up 52% writing new contracts for homes. And what I really want you to understand and consider these are dramatic numbers. When you compare any business year over year to either how much they improved or how much they declined, if you had 5% or 8% or 10% in any given year, depending on the business, those would be reasonable numbers. And think about this. 69% more contracts written at the same time in one period, and then followed by 67% the next week, 52% the next week. That's a very, very active real estate market. Let's look at condos. Similar story there. We ended June up 146%, new contracts written in that week. The rest of July, 48%, up 30%, up 26%, up 47%. And 38, topping it off, up 96%, up 183%, up 153%, up 71%. We're up across the board. All of these markets were up. And so I think a couple things to take away from this at first. If you're selling in this market, you really need to take advantage of a few things. You need to know that we're in a market where we're in what's called a low inventory situation. There are not as many homes or condos, depending on the product and the price range. In most cases, you don't have a lot of competition as a seller. And so knowing that the market is this active, knowing that there's this kind of appetite with buyers, knowing there's this kind of demand, make sure you're not leaving any money on the table and you're pricing in today's market. If you start to look at sales from 3, 4, and 5 and 6 months ago, you're in a different market. Pre-pandemic numbers almost don't apply, I would contend. So make sure this is the time that you can price a little bit aggressive, maybe depending on the product, maybe even very aggressive. There are a lot of cash buyers in the market. Don't leave any money on the table. If you're buying, make sure you're making very clean offers. You've heard me talk about this before. Escalation clauses are coming into play in our market. We haven't seen that in a long time. One other thing to consider, and something I just thought about recently, going back to this chart. So if we've gone from early March to mid-May in having some decreased demand, and now we're back to showing, since mid-May, we're out showing about the same amount in real estate as we did last year. But we're writing new contracts in these numbers that are 50, 60, 80% more, 100% more. At some point, you would think that those numbers have to settle down to maybe even with last year, since we've been showing real estate for about the same amount as we did last year. And one theory that I have, and I'd love to hear from anybody who's in statistics, maybe has some experience with economic forecast or anything like that. If you look at this right here, we went from early March to mid-May with this decrease in demand, right? There's decrease in showing activity, decrease in demand. Now we're about at the same level of activity, but we have increased number of contracts written. I would contend that one way to look at the time of when the market might settle in, because these great numbers, maybe they can last for 10 years. I know that's an exaggeration. I don't know that would happen. I would expect at some point for the market to settle back more in line, just like the showings have settled in from some decreased showing activity. So if you think about that, how long would that take? Well, it took 2 months to recover the showing activity from cratering and then moving back up and then getting to normal. So if we look at how long we've been in this market with contracts, let's just look at the chart for a second. Anything under the 0% lines means we were underperforming. Look at all these negative numbers in whatever the product, minus 70%, minus 79%, minus 67%, all of these negative numbers. We were below year over year numbers through until we started to see some positives in early May, right? We were about mid-May when the showing levels started to come around. So it's been just about, by middle of July, it's been about 2 months since we've had some recovery in showing activity. We were about 2 months of being off in showing activity. So one theory that I've got, and again, I'd love to hear from some statisticians or some economists out there. If for the last 2 months we've been showing real estate at the same level, but the previous 2 months before that we had decreased activity, wouldn't it make sense that it would take a couple of months or so to catch that, for that demand, that pent up demand, to shake itself out through the market and settle back in just like the showing activity did? it'll be interesting to see, especially as seasonal as beach real estate is. It'll be interesting to see if these impressive numbers that we have start to settle in and throttle back a little bit as that pent-up demand from March and April kind of settles in, like I'm talking about. One thing that I think might be interesting to watch is really to pay attention to these percentages. So, like, look at 30A. In May, we were up 111, 183, 141, 167. Wow, 386. And now they maybe started to relax a little bit, 113, 96. Still impressive, 183, 153, 71. Over the next couple of weeks, if we start to see 70, 50, 60, 40, maybe that's a sign that the market is settling back down, cooling off from what's a really heated, hot market right now. Same thing in condos. Look at this. You know, we topped off we gone from late in May at minus 46%, down 10, down 9. Now we're up 88, 29, 45, 43, another whopping 146. And now look, it's chilled out a little bit, 48%, 30%, 26%, 47%. Again, still very impressive numbers year over year, but things are starting to settle down, maybe cool off a little bit. Same thing, let's look at July in the housing market. Again, 7%, which is a pretty normal year over year number. 69, 67, 52. That market still looks like it's probably a little hotter than maybe some of these other markets going forward. And it'll be interesting to note or think about all the factors that go into this, the seasonality of things, especially the Panama City Beach condo market and the 30A market, which are very vacation rental product driven, very rental driven, versus the Panama City Beach homes market, which of course is more of an end user. Those things will matter. Anything that's happening with news around the pandemic will matter. Anything that's happening with the stock market going into another round of earnings reports, anything that's going on leading up to or less than 100 days away from a presidential election, some of the news that's going on with that. So again, just like we started tracking showing appointments and showing activity at the beginning of a pandemic because it was an event, we're now just going to track this all the time so we can get some sense of where we're going. The number of new contracts written, again, is still very, very healthy in this market. Last thing for today, again, if you're selling in this market, be thoughtful about how you release something for sale. Some marketing in this, in as active as things are, can really make a difference in maximizing, getting into multiple offer situations, getting into really maximizing on a price so that you get the cleanest, strongest offer out there. If you're buying, be bold in this market. Have clean offers. Again, remember how to write something that's very clean, that's going to get a seller's attention. Make sure you're prepared. Make sure you have proof of funds ready. Make sure you have your pre-approval letters ready. Make sure your agent understands how to get creative in presenting an offer so that all the contingencies are in there that are needed to protect you, but maybe they don't come out as blatant as the pre-printed form would make it. There's some creative ways to make things a little more appealing for a seller, which if you are in a multiple offer situation could be all the difference and you getting the deal or not. So hope you guys found this helpful. I know it's about 13 minutes of some rambling, but again, the market is very, very healthy still. We're still watching some very impressive numbers year over year. We'll be back the next week or two with some more updates and let you know how it's going. Thanks for watching.